In this video, we're going to connect all that we found out about the unit circle and construct a cast diagram that will help us find the sine, cosine, and tan of theta in any of our four quadrants of the unit circle. We found that any point on the unit circle in quadrant 1 had the coordinates cos theta, sine theta. We then reflected that angle into the second quadrant and found that the point on the circle had the coordinates minus cos theta, sine theta. We could then reflect it into the third quadrant and found that the point had the coordinates minus cos theta minus sine theta, and then reflecting it back into quadrant 4, the point had the coordinates cos theta minus sine theta. I'm now going to introduce a new definition for tan theta. Tan theta is equal to sine theta over cos theta. This means in quadrant 1, because both sine and cos are positive, tan theta will also be positive. So that means now in quadrant 1, we know that all sine, cosine, and tan are positive. If we now go to quadrant 2, tan theta would be sine theta over minus cos theta. So tan in that quadrant would be negative. That means in that quadrant 2, cosine would be negative, tan would be negative, and sine would be positive. So the only one in there that is positive is sine. So we will call that S. If we now go to quadrant 3, we would have tan theta is equal to minus sine theta over minus cos theta. That would make tan theta positive, because you would have a negative divided by negative that would be positive. So in quadrant 3, we now know that the only one that is positive is tan. So let me put quadrant 2. And now if we go into quadrant 4, we know that tan theta is minus sine over cos, which would make tan negative. So in there, cos is positive, sine is negative, tan is negative. So we'll call that C. So we now have our cast diagram. In quadrant 1, which is A, all are positive. In quadrant 2, S, only sine is positive. In quadrant 3, T, tan is positive. And in quadrant 4, the only one that is positive is cosine. This diagram can now help us find whether in each quadrant cos, sine, or tan is positive or negative. So let's now go through some examples. I recommend that you always draw your cast diagram. So I've got a cast diagram and I've also got a table of our exact values. So for the first one, I want to find the value of cos 120. So if I draw my little diagram, 120 degrees is that angle there. So theta is actually 60 degrees. So that is equal to cos 60 degrees. Now all I've got to decide is it positive or negative? Well, it's in quadrant 2, and if I look at my diagram, in quadrant 2 only sine is positive, so cos must be negative, so it's minus cos 60, which is equal to minus, if I look at cos 60, well, that's cos, and cos 60 is a half, so it must be minus a half. Now, if I go to the second one, I want sine 225, or quick diagram. 225 is that angle there. So this angle here, the acute angle, is 45 degrees. So that's equal to sine 45. Now I've just got to decide whether it's positive or negative. If I look at the CAS diagram in quadrant 3, the only one that is positive is tan, so that must be negative. If I now go to my diagram, I want sine 45, which is 1 over root 2. I don't like on the bottom, so that is equal to 2 over root 2, and it is negative. If we look at number 3, we want tan 300. So if we draw our diagram, 300 is in quadrant 4, so that's 300. So our angle is 60 degrees. So that is equal to tan 60. Now we just need to decide whether it's positive or negative. Well, if we look at our diagram, in quadrant 4, the only one that is positive is cosine, so it must be negative. Now look at our diagram, we want tan and we want 60 degrees, so it is root 3. So the answer is minus root 3. Now 4, we want sine 660. Well, these angles can be repeated. Once we've gone round once, we can go around again. So 660, so that's 360 plus another 300. So we've gone all round one, 360, another 300 will take us into quadrant 4. So the acute angle would be 60 again. So I want sine 60. Now I've just got to decide whether it's positive or negative. Well, I'm in quadrant 4, and the only positive is cosine. So this would be minus sine 60. So if we go to our diagram, we want sine and we want 60 degrees, and it is root 3 over 2. So it will be minus root 3 over 2. Right, number 5, we want minus. So we want sine minus 120 degrees. So we can go around anti-clockwise. So if we draw a diagram, this time we're going clockwise, so we're going to go anti-clockwise. So 120 degrees is that angle there. So the acute angle will be 60 degrees. So that's minus 120 degrees. That is 60. So it is sine 60. It is in quadrant 3. In quadrant 3, the only one that is positive is tan, so it will be minus sine 60. Now look at our diagram. Sine, we want 60 degrees, so it's root 3 over 2, so it will be equal to minus root 3 over 2. And number 6, we want tan 315, minus 315, sorry. So draw our diagram. So we want that angle there is minus 315 degrees. So the acute angle will be 45 degrees. So we want tan 45. Now we need to decide whether it's positive or negative. Well, we're in quadrant 1, so everything in there is positive. So it's 45 degrees and it's going to be positive, so it is equal to positive 1. You can use your CAS diagram if your angle is in radians. Right, let's just go back to the CAS diagram. We know that 90 degrees is pi over 2 radians, so let's put it in, pi over 2. We know that 180 degrees is pi radians. We know that 270 degrees is 3 pi over 2 radians, and we know that 360 degrees is pi radians. 2 pi radians, sorry. Let's go back to our table of values. So 30 degrees is pi over 6, 45 degrees is pi over 4, and 60 degrees is pi over 3. Now that will help us when we are looking for our angles, or the acute angle. So let's go through these examples. So we want cos 7 pi over 6. So let's do our diagram. So here's our little diagram. So 7 pi over 6 is pi plus 1 over 6. So that will take us here. So that angle there will be pi over 6. So that is equal to cos pi over 6. So now we just need to know if it's positive or negative. So we go to cos, we want pi over 6. So it is root 3 over 2. And it is in quadrant 3. So in quadrant 3, the only one that is positive is tan. So it will be negative. Question 2, we want sine 5 pi over 3. So if we do our diagram, well, 5 pi over 3 is the same as 2 pi minus pi over 3. So that would take us here. So that is pi over 3. So we want sine pi over 3. And we now need to decide whether it's positive or negative. Well, it's in quadrant 4, and the only one that's positive is cos, so it would be negative. So we want sine pi over 3. Well, there's sine, and pi over 3 is root 3 over 2. So that would be negative root 3 over 2. Question 3. Tan minus 3 pi over 4. So going the opposite way round. So if we draw a diagram, there we go. Well, minus 3/4. That would take us that way. So that would make that pi over 4. So we are in quadrant 3. So that would be tan pi over 4. Well, in quadrant 3, tan is positive. So now let's look for it. We got tan pi over 4 is 1. So it is going to be positive 1. Question 10. We want cos minus 5 pi. Well, if we go round, we go the opposite way around the diagram. Where if we go once round, that will be minus 2. Twice round would be minus 4. So we're going to go another pi would take us there. So that is equal to cos pi. Well, at that point, we know that cos pi is equal to -1. It's actually this value here. Question 11, sine minus pi over 4. So a quick diagram. So we know we're going the wrong way around, so we're going this way. So that would be minus pi over 4. So we're looking for sine pi over 4. So we're in quadrant 4, and the only one that's positive in that quadrant is cos, so it will be negative. So we want sine pi over 4 is root 2 over 2, so it will be equal to minus root 2 over 2. And question 12, tan minus 17 pi over 3. Well, if you go round six times the wrong way, you will get back to the start. So we want to go nearly 6 times, so we want to go pi over 3 less. So that is the angle that we want. So we want tan pi over 3. We are in quadrant 1, so it is definitely going to be positive. So let's look for tan pi over 3. So there's tan pi over 3 is root 3. So tan to the minus 17 pi over 3 is equal to root 3. Whenever you're doing these sort of questions, make sure you draw yourself a little diagram. Make sure you find the acute angle. It's the only angle that you can use, and that you draw yourself a quick cast diagram if you're not sure, and then hopefully you shouldn't have any problems with this sort of questions on paper 1.